Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Thank you so much for coming here on a Sunday. Great to see you all. And today we'll be continuing our discussion about our relationship with the mind. We may not even notice the mind, except for we at intervals might feel that we're overwhelmed, or we might feel anxious or happy, and be unaware of how we're being affected by our internal environment. We talked last week about how the mind is the sense within. And we also discussed how we've been with the mind that we have now since a time immemorial, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Krishna talks about how we bring our minds with us from one gross material body to the next, and we have the impressions stored inside. It's not dissimilar from what modern psychologists have also spoken about in the subconscious mind and how it affects us. And we may not be aware of why we have certain predispositions in our life and fears and so forth, but according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a science behind it. And one of the main purposes of the process of yoga, as Krishna describes it in Bhagavad Gita, is to become sama, or even-minded, even though we're in a changing environment. And even though we may face various obstacles in life, to be able to steady the mind is extremely useful. What to speak of how necessary it is to notice our existential situation and be able to find a remedy, or at least even understand that a remedy is needed. This organization called the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was founded by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who came to the West with the desire to make sure that the culture of knowledge coming from the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita was available to people all over the Western world. Of course, he didn't stop there, and it's a rather remarkable story that he came without any support, and that he was able to successfully spread the culture of Krishna consciousness by establishing centers all over the world, on every continent, and also by publishing and distributing millions of books within a short amount of time. It's actually amazing. That's from 1965 up to 1977 that he wrote and published about 80 books. And they were sold in the millions in many different languages. So his intention was to offer places where people could come after reading the books and then find a practical way to take up the spiritual tenets of Krishna consciousness so that they could take them home and use them in their daily lives. Not that everybody has to move into an ashram to be successful, but wherever one goes, if one can adhere to a few basic, simple principles and maybe slight adjustments in attitudes and maybe a couple of tweaks of one's habits, then anyone can start to notice that I feel happier by doing this, and that could be encouraging. So I first offer my respects to the founder Acharya, who's also my spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and all the previous spiritual teachers through whom the teachings of Krishna consciousness have been passed down in a so-called disciplic succession, and to all of you who are on the spiritual path. Hare Krishna. Before I go into mentioning a few practical points about the mind. And as I mentioned last week, this is a series that started off with a short vignette that I wrote about boxing with the mind, because one of the practices that we do regularly in the Krishna consciousness movement is to meditate by chanting a mantra. And this process of mantra meditation is called japa. One can initiate the process oneself by just chanting the mantra out loud and listening to it, or chanting it softly, sitting somewhere listening, or one can pace. And the philosophy behind it is the name of Krishna is not different from Krishna, and by listening one will develop a clarity of consciousness and perhaps other kinds of benefits that become self-apparent when chanting. And even while doing that and taking up the spiritual practice, we may notice that the mind becomes either helpful to us or not. And so we'll talk about this boxing with the mind, and I don't mean it to sound so combative, but it could be a friendly boxing match. So first we'll start by trying the chanting process to see how it works for us by doing kirtan. And kirtan is the singing congregationally of the mantra, Hare Krishna mantra, which has 3 words, Hare, Krishna, and Rama. They're all names for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the philosophy is that they're non-different from Him, and in combination with the mantra which goes Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're actually prayerfully asking to be connected to the Supreme in service. Because once we have that kind of service, then it's very absorbing and naturally satisfying. So shall we try it? Okay. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaur Hari Bo. Jnanatimirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. So speaking about the mind, we all live in the same world, but every single one of us see it differently because we're seeing it through the lens of our minds. So the word perception actually has a meaning of things that we pick up, that we grab onto. What we perceive is what we take from the environment. Although we're looking at the same environment, one person picks up the fact that something's red, somebody else thinks something's blue. People see things as negatively or positively according to the way they are. The mind is an instrument and it has to be tuned. So the process of yoga is bringing the mind into tune with the Supreme. And when we're able to do this, then the mind becomes our friend. We have, when it's in tune, discrimination called vivek. We can make good decisions and know what's good and what's bad for us. When the mind's not in proper order, then we may make bad decisions and think they're good. Or we may be very uncertain, or we also may know something's good and may not be able to do it. So coming to spiritual strength has a lot to do with cleansing the mind. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the foremost teacher of bhakti yoga in the world, from whom this whole line of teachings that we're engaged in here in a practical sense has been passed down from, who is Krishna's most recent incarnation in the world over 500 years ago, who showed by example how to live a life in tune with the Supreme. So one of the ways that we find from the Bhagavad Gita and from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings of what he said was Cheto Darpanamarjanam. You have to clean the mind. He compared it to a mirror and said you can't see yourself clearly in a mirror that's dusty or dirty or it can be completely obscured as well. And this is this phenomena of there being different degrees of clarity within the mind is explained by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita to have everything to do with the way our mind, which is a neutral instrument, is affected by the three modalities of the world. So the three modalities are named by Krishna as sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva is a mode of clarity. When the mind is in this state, then we see the world the way it is and we see ourselves the way we are. Clear vision. When it's in rajas, the passionate mode, then it's smoky. We know something's there, we just can't tell exactly what it is. And when the mind is in tamas, which is the lowest mode, we're in darkness. We can't see anything at all. It's complete darkness. So, fortunately, there are ways in which we can remedy this, and that's the whole point of this class. First of all, in the Gita, Krishna recommends that we associate ourselves with practices that induce sattva gun, or clarity and goodness. This is also one of the topics in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a quintessential book on bhakti yoga. And in it, Krishna, in speaking to his devotee, Uddhava, devotes a whole chapter to it. I'm going to read a couple of verses from it, which will give an idea about the importance of culturing sattva. This is from the 11th canto. I won't tell you which verse because then we won't be able to see the Zoom people. But you might figure it out anyway. When consciousness becomes clear and the senses are detached from matter, one experiences fearlessness within the material body and detachment from the material mind. You should understand this situation to be the predominance of the mode of goodness, in which one has the opportunity to realize me. So Krishna is speaking again, and he's the supreme. He's also within everyone's heart, besides being a teacher who's sitting talking to Uddhava. You should discern the mode of passion by its symptoms. The distortion of the intelligence because of too much activity, the inability of perceiving senses to disentangle themselves from mundane objects. I'll read that again because I emphasized the words wrong and I think I obscured the meaning. Do-over. You should discern the mode of passion by its symptoms, the distortion of the intelligence because of too much activity, the inability of the perceiving senses to disentangle themselves from mundane objects, an unhealthy condition of the working physical organs, and the unsteady perplexity of the mind. What's that mode? Yeah. When one's higher awareness fails and finally disappears, and one is thus unable to concentrate his attention, his mind is ruined and manifests ignorance and depression. You should understand this situation to be the predominance of the mode of ignorance. With the increase of the mode of goodness, the strength of the demigods similarly increases. When passion increases, the demoniac becomes strong, and with the rise of ignorance, O Uddhava, the strength of the most wicked increases. It should be understood, that means that everyone who is in these modes becomes empowered by them more and more when the modes are present. And Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita about how these modes are shifting constantly in our lives. Even if you're in the most idyllic situation, sattva gun, it can suddenly shift at a part of the day or month or year, or an era can change, and then you'll notice that we've moved more into rajas or tamas or sattva, and that becomes palpable. But he said it's constantly shifting, and those that have acquired those modes become empowered at those particular times by those modes. Finally, it should be understood that alert wakefulness comes from the mode of goodness, sleep with dreaming from the mode of passion, and deep dreamless sleep from the mode of ignorance. I'll read it again. It should be understood that alert wakefulness comes from the mode of goodness, sleep with dreaming from the mode of passion, and deep dreamless sleep from the mode of ignorance. The fourth state of consciousness pervades these three and is transcendental. So there's a little hint there at the end that there is a kind of consciousness that is beyond the mixture of the modes. As I described, they're always mixing. And so even when one's said to be in the mode of goodness or sattva in this world, there's always a tinge of something else because it's mixing together. But there is a process through which one comes to a kind of state of consciousness that's in goodness with no effect from any of the lower modes. And that's a different kind of consciousness called Shuddha Sattva, or purified goodness. And that's also called transcendental consciousness. And that's one of the topics of the Bhagavad Gita, how to get to that kind of consciousness, because consciousness is everything. So there are various habits that one might develop in one's life in order to culture sattva gun. And many of them are mentioned in the Bhagavad, or some of them are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita and other books of knowledge that we can take up. And I'll go into a few of those very practical ones in just a moment, if that's okay. Okay. The next point is that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna recommends sama, or equanimity. Could you look up the word, please? Equanimity. Obviously, it means some kind of balance, it's equal vision, not becoming disturbed by the ways of the world. And one of the main ways that Krishna describes it in the Bhagavad Gita, or recommends it, or how to develop sama, or this equanimity, which means we'll need a plethora of microphones, both in the research department and also for the general audience, because we may have some interaction at some point. 1, 2, 3, 4. Does that qualify as a plethora? It does? I don't even know what a plethora is. Okay, what is it? Equanimity.
Equanimity is a noun. Mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation.
Could you say that one more time, please?
Yes. Equanimity is a noun. It means mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation.
One more time, and listen very carefully. I'm going to listen. I'm actually telling myself to listen. You already heard it. Go ahead one more time.
Equanimity, a noun, which means mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation.
That sounds pretty good, right? Okay. Actually, when we're presenting the Bhagavad Gita, we could just read that definition, say, that's what this book is about. Somebody volunteer to try it? Okay, thank you. Let us know how it works. So, one of the ways that Krishna recommends that we develop sama is in our work. First of all, yoga is a strategy for happiness. Its core element is sama, or evenness of mind. And non-attachment to the result of one's work is one of the key processes of developing sama. So I have a few questions for you, if you don't mind. Nobody minds? Questions can be provocative. Let me see if these are. If you remain anonymous when you give, is there any reward? Yes? Okay, somebody said yes? Okay, let's get a sample. We want to hear the reasoning behind it. Is there any reasoning behind it? If you give something anonymously, like nobody knows who gave it, is there any reward? Go ahead. Expound.
Yes, because the pureness of not anyone knowing it really makes you have nothing, and you really don't receive anything in return. So it just came out of the goodness.
So why should I do it then? What do I get? What's the reward?
You feel fulfilled that you help.
Ooh, you feel fulfilled. I think we're on to something here. Okay, were you going to say one? I'll read the question again. If you remain anonymous when you give, is there any reward?
Yes, you feel happiness in your heart.
You feel happiness.
Paramatma, Krishna.
This is, I think we just made a breakthrough right here in Silicon Valley. Yes, Kameshri has something too. The question on the floor is, if you remain anonymous when you give, is there any reward?
Yes, the reward can be the happiness of person who received the gift.
I keep hearing the word happiness and peace. That's not nothing. That's a big deal. Okay. How about this question? Am I provoking you? Is this too heavy? What if you do something that gets a highly acclaimed result, but you cheated to get there? All I'm asking for is just a brief comment. What if you do something that gets highly acclaimed result, a highly acclaimed result, but you cheated to get there? What's the result in that? Yes. Give us some sage wisdom.
So others might be proud of you, like those near you, those who know you might be proud of you, but you won't be proud of yourself.
Ooh, that hurts. Thank you. Ekachakra Pran, we see online, Ekachakra Pran is there available. What do you think?
Well, if karma always reaches its goal, Then eventually you'll be blamed for something that you didn't do to balance it out. You take credit for something you didn't do.
Very astute observation that if you take credit for something you didn't do, then later on you'll get blamed for something you didn't do also. So far, I haven't heard anybody stand up for this. Does anyone want to make a stand and say, yeah, cheating is good? Makes you feel really good about yourself? No. Thank you. Makes life easier. Okay. Those are two questions to keep in mind when we go into this topic of samma. And we can also call it non-reward seeking action. So, in the realm of non-reward seeking action, one might consider, and this is one of the broadly presented perspectives given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I can give evidence if you wish, but its summation is in the sentence, I'm not dependent on matter for happiness. I'm not dependent on matter for happiness. There's an example that Narada Muni mentions that if you have a human life, you should utilize it for spiritual pursuits. Don't worry about the material side because, as Ekachakra said, that'll come of its own accord. And there's ways in which in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that if you accumulate material things, you become attached to them, then you'll get the opposite result you were looking for if you were looking for happiness. That was your mood, trying to enjoy them, because they tend to become burdensome after some time, unless you have the right attitude when you're interacting with them. And that's the point of this, is that everything in the world is good, as long as you use it in the right context. In fact, everything requires context. Every object is judged according to context, isn't it? For instance, if you say the word good, it seems like a good word, right? But if you say it to your somebody who loves you and you say goodbye, juxtaposed with that word, it doesn't sound so nice, because like, wait a minute, where are you going? Goodbye. So everything has its context. And when somebody sees the world as paraphernalia, everything in it, the abundant variety and very useful kinds of technologies that are prevalent as items to be used in service, then this is the process that Krishna speaks about throughout the Bhagavad Gita, which is to work without expecting a result. Don't consider yourself to be the owner of the result of the work. Also, don't stop working. And consider yourself to be an instrument. So this is the kind of samma. And he says that there are many rewards from doing this. One of them is that the mind starts to become purified, in that we notice when we work without seeking a reward from the work, we're not trying to control or enjoy it, that we feel happy. Just as you all mentioned, you do work, even if it's anonymous, you feel happy. And we start to notice this more and more, that actually I'm not dependent on matter. I'm not dependent on the result to be happy. I don't have to hold on to things and control them. But I do have to do my duty. I do have to work in the world. So this is samma, and it's one of the ways to purify the mind. So one can start simply by giving away some of the fruits that one gets from working and start to notice, how do I feel? And it seems to me to be a self-evident truth that we feel happy when we give the fruits of the work away. Because so far, everybody pretty much spontaneously said they feel happier, or that in that hypothetical situation, we mentioned that there'd be kind of peace and happiness that you'd get from that, right? Okay, so that's one of the ways in which Krishna describes the way to purify the mind is to continue to do the work that you're doing in your world, in the world, because it's your occupation. It was given to you by God. You have to do it in order to survive anyway, right? But do it with a different mindset, and that is, don't claim proprietorship over the results. Doesn't mean you can't live and use all the things, but think of them differently, as they don't belong to me. I'm using them in service. So this is a kind of purifying process for the mind. And another sentence, and then I'll take a couple of reflections, that sums up this idea of sama and working without desiring fruit of results is care more about how you do than what you do or what you get as a result of doing. Care more about how you do it than what you do or what you get as a result. That's more important. So I'll just take a couple of reflections or questions before I go into the next parts. Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I wanted to request if you could elaborate more upon this thing of we should care more about how we do things than what we do.
For instance, if you cheat on your SAT and you get, what's the top score? 1,600. You get 1,600, but you cheated, you're going to feel different about it because it's how you did it, not what you got. Everyone will say 1,600, you got 1,600, you're a great person, you're very smart, and you'll be thinking, actually, I cheated. So you won't be able to assimilate any of the praise. It won't encourage you. You'll simply be, you'll feel unworthy. That's one example. And if we, as we're working, we do things that are harmful to other people, as an example, we may get a good result or what we consider to be a lucrative result, but if we harmed others in the process, then there's a way that we'll suffer the reaction. So we have to be careful about how we're doing the work. Are we harming others while we're doing it unnecessarily? I mean, there is some harm just walking around the world, and Bhagavad Gita accounts for that. So Krishna says there's, just as there's smoke in fire, fire's perfect, but not so much because there's smoke. So he says also in our occupation, there's always some little fault, but you shouldn't give up doing your work because there's a little fault here or there. But at the same time, you should be aware that when you're working, if you're not careful and to do it in the right consciousness, and you do things that are harmful to other people. As an example, I might say, let me be a philanthropist, and I'll go out and I'll feed people. But then in order to accomplish that, let's just say I start a chicken farm, and I didn't even want to bring this up, it sounds too horrible, but let's just say we have to kill other animals wholesale in order to feed people. What's the ultimate gain from that? You committed some kind of violence to other living entities unnecessarily, and then you fed somebody else. So these are a couple of examples. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I was just thinking about the cheating part that you were mentioning. So cheating is when you should not cheat if it's for your own sense gratification. But then as a service to Krishna, it's not
Be careful.
No, my question
Also,
is because, like,
be careful about getting angry for Krishna too.
because Sanatana Goswami would tell his the king that he is actually sick and he was not really sick, so he was kind of cheating.
Yeah, you could try that one on Janmashtami.
Yeah, so we do that all the time. So I was just
Yeah.
wondering when you said cheating.
Yeah, but still be careful because there's a tendency in yukta vairagya and also in thinking in these ways that you can go way off the rails. And, you know, people, like, I'm a robber for Krishna. It's his property anyway, I'm just taking it back. Are you laughing? It's not funny, it's happened before. I've seen it with my own eyes. So you just have to be really careful. And I've noticed that the devotees, those who are serious about Krishna consciousness, as Prabhupada points out in several places, they're perfect ladies and gentlemen. And so you'd want to see that in a person who's sama, as they're careful. Don't take it too far. Little thing here and there, and keep it to yourself. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, I had a question. You mentioned earlier that when the different modes are prominent, when sattva is prominent, then the demigods thrive. And we also saw at the time of Hiranyakashipu's pastime that at that time the demons were thriving because of mode of passion was prominent. So in the current era we are in now, what do you think is prominent, and how devotees should be able to thrive in this situation?
What do you think? What modes are you seeing mostly?
Mostly we see passion and ignorance prominent.
Passion and ignorance it's sort of par for the course in Kali Yuga. So we have to keep ourselves elevated in consciousness. We have to be careful because in Kali Yuga, when passion and ignorance are prominent, then it's easier to get swept away by it all. Because all you have to do is just interact with any part of the world, and you'll notice that those lower elements come into it and seem quite natural. So it's helpful to be careful oneself. That's one of the ways that we have to interact with it. Just like one of our devotees is a doctor, and he's been in the front lines, on the front lines of the pandemic since it started. And he hasn't been infected, even though he was in a COVID ward for the last 2 years. So I asked him about it, and he said, he wears 2 masks and a shield over his eyes. And he has an air purifier in the room. In fact, that's why we got that one. Lucky you're sitting next to it, part. And if you feel any purer today, that's why. It's supposed to filter the whole room, actually. It's a HEPA filter. And he was very careful. And because of that, he hasn't fallen sick. So Prabhupada also mentioned the same thing. He said, be careful, because you should keep yourself just as you do when you're physically fit and you have your immune system strong. Then it's a lot harder to fall sick. And so similarly, we have to keep ourselves in the higher modes of nature so we don't get infected. At any time, actually, but especially nowadays. And I concur. I notice a lot of the effects of passion and ignorance. So we should be kind and try to uplift the environment. I saw a little video of Harinam Ruchi, the little party that goes around and does Harinam everywhere. And it's just kind of nice. They go everywhere and chant Hare Krishna in shops, on boardwalks, in every place they go, they're chanting. And you just notice that suddenly the environment gets purified by their presence. Okay, we'll just take 2 more, and then I have a few more points that I'd like to make.
Thank you, Maharaj.
And there's one up there, okay?
Okay. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my most humble obeisances. I really like the point when you said that I'm not dependent on matter or results for my happiness. And I was thinking about, it's always said that you should not worry about the final destination, but the journey, how you took it, and the how you did it. I really like that point, because if you don't do it right, even if you achieve it, there's no happiness in it.
Yeah, operation was a success and the patient died. Ananya, is that you?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was, but with your mask on, I could recognize you. I only see you on...
Hare Krishna. So then I know that all around us there's passion and ignorance. So then how do we stay away from these materialistic desires and these passion and ignorance?
Best way is to take time to chant Hare Krishna, also eat spiritual food, and good if you read a little bit every day from Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, and definitely join Youth Jam. Because we like you. Okay. All right, so sama. working without seeking a reward. And you can try that out at home. You can try it out anywhere. It is recommended. Oftentimes people say, don't try this at home. Yes, try it at home. Was there one online that I missed? 2. Okay. Go ahead. Hari Murli.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
One way you mentioned to achieve sama is to give away the fruits of our work. And I wanted to ask, if we give away the fruits of our work, sometimes our mind has a tendency of not wanting to care anymore because we don't get the results after all. So how do we still care and still give away the fruits at the same time?
Are you sure? Have you tried it?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because some people go the other way and they think, let me make more so that I can give more. Like I noticed some, I won't mention any names, they're always giving. They're thinking how to make more so they can give more. Well, if you're giving the fruits of your work and then you feel non-motivated to work, is that what you're saying? We'll just balance it out so that you give to the point where you feel motivated to work and you can still give. Be balanced. One more online? He just went.
Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Okay, go ahead.
Please accept my humble obeisance. This is Yashoda Vatsaldas.
Hare Krishna.
Guru Maharaj, you mentioned about the judgment mentality of this material world. So I wanted to know, many times I feel like getting into judgment creates kind of, reaction, or, it makes me to, puts me into different lines. So is it a, how to judge, or if in case we should not judge, then how we should deal with others?
It's not judgment as much as it is discrimination. This is called vivek. And when you hear from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and you develop some spiritual common sense by chanting Hare Krishna and seeing how the world works, you should use various forms of evidence to see what the nature of the world is. Shruti, Pratyaksha, Aitiyam, Anumanam, Chatushpadam. So there's 4 types of evidence you can use. Krishna says use them all to understand the nature of the world and then discriminate. What is a good decision and what is a bad decision of where to apply one's energies in the world and where to give one's attention. That makes sense. So it's not a matter of judgments, but it's just discrimination. And there are ways to discriminate about how to associate with different types of people. If they're helpful to you and you can be helpful to them, then you, by all means, give your heart and soul. If by associating with certain types of people, they become disturbed by your association, because it may be, you may have a perspective that disturbs their minds, and they also disturb you, then the Shastra gives you full permission to be friendly, but at a distance. That's discrimination, it's not judgment, it's practical. Is that okay?
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Good to hear your voice. And nice to see Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. Okay, now the next, so the sama, this is very practical, and you can work without seeking reward. Do some selfless service. The next is, there are 5 disciplines mentioned that help to purify the mind. And the first one is shaucha, or cleanliness. So in shaucha, it means to keep yourself clean inside and out. So it's recommended in the Shastra, believe it or not, to be tidy and neat and clean. Make your bed in the morning. You don't have to raise your hand, but you know who you are if you don't. It's the first thing you should do. No, really, make your bed. It's in the military, they make you make your bed. And I guarantee you, in the brahmachari ashram, you make your bed too. So it's part of, it's the start. It's the way you should live, neat and clean, a place for everything in its place. an uncluttered environment from the inside. So remember that you're a container and that your contents determine the contentment of your mind. So there's external clutter, which amounts to visual noise. If you have stuff you don't need and it's all piled up, then be sattvic and deal with it. Don't hold on to extra stuff. This is called atyahara. So you have to be careful not to become a collector of things that you don't need. And also thoughts that you don't need too. So you have to look on the internal environment and see what kind of thoughts am I holding on to unnecessarily. Are they something that I can do something about? This is one way to discriminate between thoughts you can hold on to and thoughts that you can let go. Are there thoughts that you can't do anything about that disturb you every day? That's a question. Can you give an example of something that you are vexed by? Thoughts that you're vexed by, but you can't do anything about them. In other words, there's a situation that you're concerned with, and it keeps going around in your head, and it takes a lot of your energy, but really you can't do anything about it.
So I recently was into a little accident, so it showed my car insurance every month premium. So I can't do anything about it, but it keeps on coming to my head.
What's done is done. Prabhupada used to use that mantra. Don't use it too much, but, but yeah. And there may be world situations too, political. Somebody might get into, whether their sports team won or lost. What can you do about it? You're not playing. If somebody tripped and fell, it's like, why is it a big deal to you? They tripped and fell and they weren't able to kick the ball into the net. That's not a big thing to hold on to and use up a lot of energy. So you have to be discriminatory and not overclutter your mind. So the next one is contentment, is to actually practice satisfaction. So that has to do with disinterest in accumulating more than one's immediate needs in life. And one of the moods of or feelings of satisfaction is enough. I have enough. And if you can come to a point of feeling that or practicing feeling I have enough. For instance, if the urge comes that I just need more stuff in order to become happy, well, maybe you do. But first notice that if you're okay without it. And I'm not advocating penury or becoming a Luddite or just being unnecessarily austere. Take what you need in your quota, but don't keep extra stuff and learn to be satisfied in yourself. This is one of the practices of the mind, to be peaceful. Srimad Bhagavatam says, just as a deer, because of ignorance, cannot see the water within a well covered by grass, but runs after water elsewhere, the living entity covered by the material body does not see the happiness within him or herself, but runs after happiness in the material world. So we have a natural sense of satisfaction when we're able to see who we are and our relationship with the Supreme. And you can be anywhere at any time and feel that satisfaction. So that's important, a practice to feel that and to notice it. Interestingly, another one is that austerity or tapasya or jagya. If this is called tapodivyam. If you take some effort, which means that you have to get off the couch, that's effort, right? And you got to go over and do it, or even maybe a little further, or you apply yourself to something that takes some of your energy. But it's for a divine cause. This is called tapasya. A little trouble to yourself for a divine cause. It makes your mind peaceful. This is called yajna. I skipped over one verse, but I want to read it to you from the 7th canto. For a person who has suitable shoes on his or her feet, there is no danger even when he or she walks on pebbles and thorns. For those people, everything is auspicious. Similarly, for one who is always self-satisfied, there is no distress. Indeed, he or she feels happiness everywhere. So some of the austerities that are recommended, to tolerate the extremes in nature. Again, doesn't mean becoming a Luddite. You can get an air conditioner if you need one, but don't overreact to all the changes in the environment in the world. And Krishna says, learn to be steady and continue doing your duty, even if the environment changes a little bit. Be steady. Also, another austerity that he recommends is avoiding useless talk. And one of the ways I like to think about it is to analyze what I'm going to say before I say it. Don't say everything, I'm telling myself, don't say everything that comes to my mind, to your mind, because not all of it's necessary. And if you wait a couple seconds and think, do I need to say this? Sometimes it just floats off and you go like, no, there's just going to be a reaction. So it's something that Narada Muni recommended for not disturbing the mind and keeping the mind peaceful. He said that whatever you desire to describe that doesn't have a higher purpose simply disturbs your mind like a boat on the water that's blown around by the wind. So you can notice that. And then the next one of the 5 is study of spiritual wisdom and also japa. These both come under the category of swadhyaya, which means self-examination. So if you get a nice wicker chair and you curl up with the Bhagavad Gita and you read a chapter, will you feel better or worse about yourself in the world? Huh? Okay, that's good. So do it. Just if your mind's disturbed, or if you want to be preemptive and make sure your mind doesn't get disturbed, then find a wicker chair and curl up in it and read the Bhagavad Gita, at least a chapter, and or at least a couple verses, something, and you can reflect on it. That's something that you can do for yourself to help purify the mind. And the other is japa. So in japa, we take the mantra, especially the Hare Krishna mantra, and we take time to repeat it and listen to the sound vibration. The sound is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, iti murtyabhidanena mantra murtim amurtikam yajite yagya purusham sasamyag darshana puman. It says if you want to have a direct access to the Supreme and feel what it's like to be in contact with the Supreme right now, like a lot of people say, can you show me God? Have you ever heard that? Like, where is he? Can you show him to me? Well, somebody might say, I'm very thirsty. Can you give me a drink of water? And then you say, yeah, I'll give you a drink. It's in that cloud. Go help yourself. That's like saying, well, God's in heaven. And then someone else might say, well, yeah, you can get some water to drink. It's in a flash flood. That's like saying, wait for one of the avatars to appear in the world, then you can go see him. And then somebody else might say, yeah, there's water. It's in the ground. There's aquifers under here. All you have to do is drill a hole with your bare hands, and then you get down there, and then you can pull some out and have a drink of water. That's like doing yoga and trying to see the super soul in your heart. But chanting the mantra is like water in the palm of your hand. You can do it any time. If you just pay attention for a few minutes and listen to the sound vibration, you'll notice that you have direct communion with God. So that's not so bad, right? Right. It's not bad at all. So when you do that, then you'll learn a lot about yourself from reading the Bhagavad Gita and chanting the names of the Supreme and just listening, because one of the things we learn about ourselves is that we're part of the Supreme, and we thrive when we're in consonance with the Supreme, and that's one of the ways to feel that and to feel happy about life and to feel that actually everything's going to be okay. That doesn't sound so bad, right? I try to get more reaction out of everybody because I can't tell whether you're smiling or not when you have masks on, so it's for my own edification. And the last is devotional service to the original conscious source. And when we dedicate all our activities to Ishvara, the Supreme Controller, then there's a natural way that the mind feels controlled and peaceful and happy. So these are the 5. The first one is cleanliness. Be clean inside and out. Make your bed. Thank you. Be aware of the fact that there may be visual noise in your environment. Clean up the clutter. Make sure the inside, the thoughts you're holding on to or entertaining that are going around like a ceiling fan, if there's nothing you can do about them, then you don't have to chase them so heavily. Or if you need help, talk to somebody and process it so that you can gradually develop a working relationship with those thoughts and learn how to balance them. I learned that from my father. He was a psychologist. Sometimes he had patients for like 10, 12 years. They'd meet regularly and just talk. And a lot of people, it's very heavy, and it's heavy for everybody in the material world. But if you have somebody to talk to and you can just process things, then it can be very helpful. But don't just chase them around and around with no end in mind. Practice satisfaction, do austerity, tapasya, and study the wisdom literatures and chant Hare Krishna. And number 4, I'm going to show you a little slideshow. Fun, right? Yay. Okay, here comes the slideshow. When I was in school and they'd wheel in they used to have kids, they used to have projectors when I was a kid that actually had real film in them. And us kids would get so happy when the film would get wheeled in the room, because then we didn't have to sit and listen to the teacher. You ready? I know you are. I'm just seeing if the film crew is. So this is about non-application of the conglomerating process. There's a way in which we are existing in this world because of subtle desires. And we may have created a reality for ourselves in our minds through which we see the world that's very difficult to overcome. And what shall be the signal for you to move the slides? I'll say, Govinda. When I say Govinda, oh, you're going to give me a clicker? Okay. So you see the broken plate up there while I'm waiting for the clicker? Would you like a do-over for that? Well, you can have one now. I'm going to show you a little trick so you can reverse any mistakes you ever made in your life. Does that sound okay? Say yes. Yes. Oh, boy, this looks complicated. Okay, what do I got to hit? Up and down? See? If he can't figure it out, he's an engineer. What hope do I have? That's down goes up? Oh, okay. All right, here we go. You are pure consciousness. That's what you are. You're pure consciousness. You're a part of the supreme consciousness, just like there's photons emanating from the sun. And they have the same quality as the sun, only they're minute. And they're part of the sun, but at the same time they have individuality. So that's what all of us are. We're individual conscious entities. And originally we're pure in consciousness. So knowledge means seeing the difference between yourself and your body. This is the primary definition of knowledge, fundamental. And the next is, as Kumbh Mela gets about to start, your tatastha, which means that you can choose to give your attention to lower or higher energies. Everyone say, I can choose. Somebody bring seats and take care of our guests, please. Give them a nice place to sit back there so they can see or whatever they wish. Okay, thank you for coming. Good to see you. Everyone please say, I can choose to give my attention to lower or higher energies. That's a good affirmation. So that'll make all the difference in the world. And so yoga means reorienting your attention to the higher energies. When you learn to reorient your power of your attention, because where attention goes, energy flows. That's the way you're going to go in your life. Learn to reorient your attention to your higher energies, your attention to your higher energies. So your mind is called the chitta, and it's volatile, which means it's subject to waves, contractions, and expansions. And when when we expose ourselves to material environments and thoughts and so forth, the chitta contracts and it feels very dark and we feel hopeless, depressed, and so forth. When the chitta expands and is full of light, then we feel happy. Happiness is called sukha. Ka means space, and su means good. So when you have good space in your head, like you're in a good space, are you in a good space? Then this is happiness. And dukkha means that you're in a bad space. So you have to create that space. And one of the ways to do it is through mantra, because it purifies and stills the chitta, and it frees one from the entanglement with karma. Karma means that we're forced by our previous impressions that we have within our chitta or our mind to act in certain ways that we don't necessarily even think about. We think we're making the choices, but we're being impelled by the thought process. So here's how the world manifests. Are you ready? I'm not convinced that you're ready. It manifests from subtle to gross. How does it manifest? Everything starts on a subtle level as a seed, a thought, a tiny little entity, and then it expands from there under the right circumstances. So everything that you have manifested in your life now, it has expanded from a subtle level and is grossified. And creation takes place with sound, especially. It's the subtle element of creation. So the world is designed to fulfill our desires. Did you know that? Does that make you happy or sad? Like, what was I thinking? What did I desire? You express your desires with your voice. And manifestation occurs by the subtle element of sound. So, there is a progressive way in which desires move through our apparatus called the human body, which are defined in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it starts with the lowest chakra. And that chakra is right at the bottom of your spine. It generates a kind of vibration which is called bharavak, like a desire. It sort of agitates and it starts to move up through the force of prana, and it comes up to the next energy center in your body as pashanti vak. Vak means a kind of sound vibration. At first, it is unstruck sound. It's not something that's vibrating, that's hitting the eardrum. And then it comes up higher as madhyama vak. When you get into your mind, you start to develop a vision of that desire, and you accept the vision through your intellect, and you say, yeah, this is a good idea. This happens practically simultaneously. It's happening in a flash. And then vikari vak means you vocalize it. You say, I want Cheetos. And like, no, you can't have them. They have all kinds of garbage in them. And so it manifests, desire manifests, it gets vocalized, it's vak. So how to reverse what you've created? You want one of these? I'm not convinced. You don't want that. Oh yeah? Okay. An undo button you want. Except you enact the creative process inversely. Just reverse it. So the way that's done through mantra is a progression of manifestation by speech. You go the opposite way. So when we start with the mantra, we're actually changing the vibration. We're vocalizing with the tongue and the tongue box a spiritual sound vibration. And the recognition takes place in your intellect when you hear it. So that's why you have to pay attention when you chant. And then the conception arises in the mind of the mantra because it actually is a manifest form of the Supreme. Atashri Krishna namadi nabhaved grayamindriye sevam mukhi jivado swayam eva spratyada. Krishna will manifest in your intellect when you chant his name with service and you're paying attention, right? And then para, the desire that disturbs the prana, that will become purified by the process. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. If you chant this mantra, the way it works, it will purify the mind through this inverse process of creating material things. You'll reverse it, and your whole life will become spiritualized. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. There's lots more to say, but we're just going to chant a little bit because we have a few minutes before we go. Yes? Keep grabbing, John. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. That was such a beautiful presentation on bringing us how the Mahamantra systematically dislodges our impure desires from our heart and brings it back to where the desires belong. I've also realized that Sri Nam Prabhu is completely independent to give mercy to the soul, to the conditioned soul. For some, the mercy seems to just manifest so powerfully, and for some, it takes time. So I just was wondering, sometimes by our own endeavor, we cannot get that. So what can we do? We have to only beg for that mercy because it's a top-down process. So what do you feel?
What should we do?
Yeah.
Yeah, just keep chanting. Because everyone has an individual personal relationship with Krishna, and he knows what's best for us, and he'll manifest at the right time. Yeyatamam prapadyante doesn't necessarily mean tit for tat. It means that Krishna is very much aware of who we are, and he has our highest interests in mind. Kind of like your mother. Who loves their mother? Thank you. Now imagine your mother times 10 million. Like, the love you have for your mother and that she has for you and all she gave you. Now imagine it times 10 million. Make it 1 billion. If you can even imagine such a thing and how much you'd want to spend time at home. So that's Krishna. And when you say his name, you're calling mother Hara and Krishna. And he's the most kind friend. And he has every good intention times 10 billion for us. So whatever way in which he's helping us along, which we may not see at first, when the mother's changing the baby or something, the baby's going, leave me alone, what does the baby know at that point? So we have to trust the mother, trust Mother Hara, and just understand that there, if we can come to that psychological peace, that there is a supreme, and he's our best friend, and he loves us, and everything, he's the perfect moral agent when dealing with the material world, and as far as our spiritual advancement goes and our intention to serve him, all bets are off. He'll do everything, move heaven and earth, in order to bring us closer to that loving relationship, and that's what's happening in all these. So when we know that, then we have more patience, and we also feel more content when we're chanting. It's that nagging feeling that maybe I'm getting ripped off again. And Krishna talks about that in the Bhagavad Gita as I chew up the rest of the clock. Vitaraga bhayakroda manmaya mamupashrita. He says, don't be so afraid because you've had so many bad experiences. This is me talking here, he says. I'm going to take care of you. It's not like the relationships you've known before, even with your own mother. It's different. Don't be afraid. Okay, thank you. And for pointing out also, it's an important point. What should we do? What? We don't have time now. Okay, we're gonna chant one way or the other, either sitting here or standing up. So I guess we got to stand up now. But in any case, we talked a little bit, and just in the time that we had, there were a few points about how to work in the world to bring the mind to a peaceful state so that we can be in consonance with the Supreme and we can start developing that relationship that we have with Krishna. I hope some of them helped, and we'll continue and we'll also repeat some of the points so that we can solidify them. So now we're going to put away these asanas and roll up this rug and open up this floor. We bought this place about 8 years ago specifically because of this floor, because it's a good dance floor. So please take advantage of it. You could jump up and down. You can move about and express your heart's desire to Krishna in dance. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu ki.
Thank you. Thank you. So I hide my mask so I never find it again. I looked around the other evening. I don't know what happened to it. Hare Krishna. Last week. Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaha Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswate Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunyamari Paschata Deshatarine Namaste Saraswate Deve Shunyamari Jata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You set up the other mic. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Go Premanande Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privraj Kacharya Stotarishti Shishiman Abhay Charanada the Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privraj Kacharya Stotarishti Shishiman Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prams Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopabina Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sri Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulsi Devi, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Chamuna Devi, Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Samveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol. Jushi Nishingadev, Lakshmi Nishinga, if you so desire, please protect Hansapriya's mother, Hari Priya. Thank you for considering the request. And Dasa.
We'd also like to request prayers for Leela Nandani Mataji's father, Madhupati Keshav Prabhu, who passed away last night in Delhi, as well as Venugita Mataji's cousin brother who passed away last week.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. We welcome you all who are present here and also who have joined us online for this evening program here at ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Thank you all for coming. So let's give a big round of applause to everyone. Today's Krishna Katha was brought to us by His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu. So please, let's give us a big round of applause. And also for bringing us Gaura Arti and ecstatic Kirtan. We'd like to also thank Avantika for bringing us the Narsimha Arti. Hare Krishna.
First, we'd like to begin by acknowledging any newcomers today. Is there anyone here for the first time? Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for coming. We look forward to having your association more and more often. If there's anything that you need or any doubts that you have or anything, please feel free to approach me, Sri Gopal Prabhu, or Sachin Krishna Prabhu. We also have three sponsorships for today's Sunday feast. The first is Radhika Prema Mataji for her grandfather who passed away last week. Second is Tadiya Seva Prabhu for his grandmother that passed away. And Venugita Mataji for her cousin brother. Next, we'd like to acknowledge the cooks that cooked the wonderful prasadam for today.
Hare Krishna. Today's prasadam was cooked by Hari Sankirtan Prabhu, Neela Mataji, Thadiya Seva Prabhu, Deepika Mataji, Ashish Prabhu, and Preeti Mataji.
We're also looking for volunteers for cleaning the temple today. So if anyone wants to help out with the cleaning, please approach me and we can get to work. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Next will be prasadam prayers. Hare Krishna.
Hare. These are prayers to Krishna, written by a great saint in the line of Gaudiya Vaishnavas coming from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And here he talks about how in the practice of yoga, it's very difficult to control the tongue. But it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that if you've controlled the tongue, then it's known that you've controlled all the other senses. And if you haven't controlled the tongue, then we can know for sure that all the other senses are not controlled. And he goes on to say that it's the most voracious of all the senses. Sometimes you fast for a few days and say, I'll starve my tongue, and then after 3 days the tongue comes back and says, now you owe me. Double, triple, quadruple, septuple. I'm going to eat 7 times as much as before. I think there's also a phenomenon known as yo-yo dieting. It's a real thing. So the tongue is not so easy to contend with, what to speak of control or make one's friend. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Lord Chaitanya is so kind that he's given us prasadam, that is spiritual food. So today I was taking some prasadam and I was looking at it and I was thinking, this is Krishna's mercy. And it was a different experience than just eating and running. In Japan, they have little stalls where you don't even sit down. You walk in, you get a bowl, and you're supposed to eat it as loudly and as quickly as you possibly can. Slurping is considered to be a complement. And speed is the objective. But with prasadam, we're thinking that actually this is the favor of Krishna, and the food has been offered with love and devotion to the Lord. And then when we give it to the devotees relish it, thinking this is Krishna's favor to us. And there's a way that the tongue naturally becomes controlled. So this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is talking about in this song, that we're so lucky. So he calls out for the help of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and says, by taking this prasadam today, by eating, we're going to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So do you want to try singing the song together? Okay, only a third of you. Or maybe it's the mask factor, I can't tell. Okay, here we go. Sharit Avijja Jajendriya Dahika Jive Pele Vishaya Shagare Karma Devi Payati Lopa Moisu Punati Take Jeta Takita Samsare Krishna Bodhatona Moy Gori Bare Jitajaya Shaprashad Chanda Dilokai Shayanamrita Pao Radha Krishna Gunajao Preme Dako Sri Chaitanya Nitai Preme Dako Sri Chaitanya Nitai Namaskari Kunde Namrani Vaishnave Sopa Punya Vakandasha Krishna Sena Vaishe Prasade Sarvajitana Adiyakyo Prasana Cheta Soyashi Svaya Vishta Svayopa Vishta Sanganga Vasavantar Chachitaha Ushishta Bodhino Dasa Stavamaya Jayimahi Bhagavat Shri Mahaprasad Ki Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gaur Hari Bo. Please come take prasadam. We have prasadam not just for everyone in this room, for everybody in Santa Clara, San Mateo, San Francisco. What other counties are there? Alameda, Contra Costa, that's where I'm from, for prasadam. So call your friends, get them down here, and please take prasadam, and may the Lord bless you and the rest of the week, and we'll see you back here next Sunday. Thank you very much. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Prasadam for everybody. And you can bring a friend next week. Next Sunday is Bring a Friend Week. Okay? Okay.